we were heavily, well versed in doing that when COVID hit. And so my schools that I was working with didn't blink an eye.
Welcome again to It Doesn't Take a Genius.
Ramsay!
And that's really my name, so I have to say, Marshall!
Hello, everyone, and welcome to It Doesn't Take a Genius. I'm here with Ramsay, but not Mark Ramsay. I'm here with Mark's dad, Martin Ramsay. And I know what you're thinking. It's nepotism. We got to put Mark's dad on. How good is that going to be? But let me tell you, you are in for a treat. This is one of the most remarkable human beings I've ever had the chance to learn about. And this is our first time to speak together. So I consider it a big honor and a privilege. Just a little bit of background. I know I was hanging out in your family tree. I saw that your yeah.
There's all the monkeys in it.
The limbs are diverse. It's really nice. Notice that your grandfather was a union organizer at Bethlehem Steel in the Depression in the 1930s. When that was not a popular thing to do. Just impressive. Reading up on your father, who was from Central Kentucky, went on to earn his PhD, was an author, and apparently was in the director of a folk school.
That's where I grew up.
Yeah, director with that. And then your work life, you're a podcaster. You've published 3 books that I could find.
Working on other ones.
Working on another one. And then as far as your work criteria, you were featured in Fortune magazine as an expert on organizational impact of new information systems. You won the Center for Digital Education Spotlight Award as one of the most innovative, hardworking, trend-setting IT professionals in the nation.
Not sure how excited you should get about that, but okay, it's true.
I'm fired up. It is. And then your LAMP project, Learning Asset Management Project, won the Mellon Award for technology.
That was, I was proud of that.
That's pretty incredible. And then you've worked on 4 continents.
Yep.
13 countries plus.
I got flags back here somewhere.
I see the flags. Yep. And so, you've literally traveled the world as the founder and managing director of CEATH Company, where you guys specialize in helping organizations become more effective. And so
you've done your homework. I'm honored.
You've worked in the automotive space, the heavy equipment space, the manufacturing space, the financial services space, extraction.
Mining. Yes, right.
Software, higher education, nonprofit, healthcare, and government and military clients. And on top of that, you were an early adopter into the blog setting. Notes from the Woodshed is one of my new favorite video blogs, or podcasts as we would call them now.
Golly.
You look at what you've done with technology and people, and to me from the outside, if I had to sum it up, it looks like you're an IT guy with a personality.
Oh, well, okay. I'll take that.
So you blended the two nicely. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
I know Mark's excited to listen to this.
Figure out what the heck Dad's been up to in the last 30 years.
I'd like to know. So let's start off with this incredible upbringing and influences you had. Tell me a little bit about that, and then we'll get into the work portion of this.
Oh goodness. I guess I probably didn't have a very traditional upbringing because my family is eclectic to say the least. I mean, you mentioned my grandfather. He was a union organizer, but his wife, my grandmother, was born in Nicaragua to missionary parents. So she was, so there's been a lot of kind of interesting influences. And yes, it's true. My dad was the director of a folk school, which is a non-traditional school that doesn't give credit. In North Carolina, it's where I grew up. Had the room of 300 acres that belonged to the school. And so it was a great place for a kid to grow up, very, very isolated. The nearest neighbors were probably 2 miles away. But that was a good place. And then Well, am I, would I brag if I said, no, I'll say it this way. I'm a high school dropout. True statement. But not the way that you might think. I was a sophomore, sorry, junior in high school, and I went to my dad and said, I'm kind of running out of things to take in high school. You know, it's either take bookkeeping or I don't know what I'm going to do. And he said, why don't you come with me to Berea College because I'm going to go up there on a business trip and see if maybe they might admit you. And so I talked to the director of admissions, and he said, if your grades are good enough and so forth, we'll accept you. So I went straight from my junior in high school to college, skipped my senior year. So I am literally, I do not have a high school diploma. I'm a high school dropout. But I kind of wish I had taken bookkeeping because that would have been really, really helpful later on.
Yeah, one of those things I didn't tell you about.
Yeah, right. Well, my grandfather was very keen on, you should take bookkeeping. And at the time you think, oh, that's not for, I'm college bound. We don't take bookkeeping. Well, I got over that.
Oh yeah, come to find out, bookkeeping is the foundation of everything.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I had to teach it to myself.
Who knew? So you went to college. All right. So what did you study in college?
I studied chemistry. I was a chemistry major. Didn't do anything with it.
All right. This is yeah. The plan is so well executed.
Oh yeah, yeah. There was no plan, Mike.
Yeah,
There
yeah,
was no plan.
yeah. I'm picking up on that.
Yeah, it was just get by. Yeah, so maybe this is a good segue. I was a chemistry major. I tried doing lab research, worked for Virginia Tech for a short period of time. By then, I was married, and Mark was on the way. And in fact, Mark was born in Virginia when I worked at Virginia Tech. And my wife and I felt like there aren't people here who really know us, and so we decided we would like to come back to Kentucky, where we were from. And I was offered a job in the hospital lab. Um, so I spent 4 years drawing blood from people. A lot of people still in town say, I know you. And I go, did I draw blood from you? Oh, yeah, you drew my blood test when my wife and I got married. I'm like, yeah, that was probably me. So, but chemistry led to computers because they were getting more and more automated in the lab. And so I ended up writing some little tiny bits of software to run the lab machines. And then a job opened up
Okay,
at
so
a local
give us a sense of where we're at year wise, like where
1973, 74, up till 1980. Yeah,
okay, so this
in
is
1980, I switched to working for a manufacturing company. They had a job opening. I didn't really like working in the lab. I didn't like watching people die in the emergency room. I mean, that's kind of part of what happens.
right.
Um, and you had to pull call. And by then I had two children, Mark and his brother Luke. And so this job opened up. I ended up in IT. I mean, the guy shouldn't have hired me. He shouldn't have hired me. I had no credentials.
So your early coding was on punch cards?
Oh yeah. Oh
Okay, all
yeah.
right. Just setting the scene for our audience because our audiences thinks you're sitting here working on some sort of Mac or something.
Yeah. No, 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 no.
You're
No, there
doing
were
you're doing punch cards.
I'm doing punch cards. In fact, the term floppy disk, which is probably not a term people even know anymore, is because back in those days they were 8 inches and they were floppy.
Mhm.
They were literally floppy. Um, that was what replaced punch cards. So yes, I worked with punch card decks and floppy disks, and
All
the
right. So
computer was the size of a chest freezer.
are we talking Fortran, COBOL?
Yes, on both. Yep. Fortran, Fortran, COBOL, mostly COBOL, some RPG, if anybody knows RPG. That's a wonderful
Wow.
language. I love it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I ended up in IT and then ended up switching companies, and I ended up working for a different company, Clark Equipment. People have probably heard of that. It was, it's a fairly well-known Fortune 500 company at the time. Um, and when the project I was working on finished, and this is what often happens inside of businesses, what do you do next when the project's done? Well, the VP of Human Resources said, we don't have a director of training. Would you be interested in that job? So, you said,
That's who you always go to. You always go to the ID guy to be the director of training.
well, I mean, I ended up doing a lot of training for, the systems that we were putting in. I love training. I mean, I think that's my gift is teaching people. And so you're right. I mean, I am somebody who was on the geeky, nerdy side of the fence, and then I was on the touchy-feely side of the fence, and I'm fairly comfortable in both worlds. I'm not great at either one, but I can sort of sit on the fence and not get uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
So,
I think that's where huge value. Right, I call them translators. the people
Yes.
who could take IT systems knowledge and translate it into understandable people impact kind of things, and vice versa. People who can take what the people are saying and what they desire and translate that into IT technical outcomes.
Well said, Mike. I mean, I spot on. I think that's exactly right. I mean, the IT people, the people who were not comfortable with IT would feel like they were sort of being buffaloed by the IT people, and I would kind of go, nah, come on, you don't pull the wool over our eyes. I know that that's not what you said is, it can be done or whatever the case may be. And vice versa. It's like, okay, IT guys, here's what they're saying. I know it's kind of screwy, it's very vague, but here's what they're saying. Let's see if we can, build a system that's going to do this. So yeah, I think that was well said. I
Uh,
like it.
that, that,
Can that. That's good.
yeah. Somebody keep that. That's good stuff. And for those of our, we've got some young listeners. For our young listeners, and I think the stat is somewhere around 70% of people are not working. College graduates are not working in the field in which they got their degree.
No big surprise. Yeah.
Yeah, and so your career, right, going from chemistry to the lab to IT, and now we're at the training phase.
Yeah.
That just should give all young people hope that,
Oh yeah.
yeah, if you
Well,
haven't found it yet, it's okay.
That's
You're gonna
right.
find it.
Well, and it probably, depends on your point of view. It gets worse or gets better. Uh, because what happened was in 1993, and August 5th, 1993 is a day that's just burned into my mind, was the date that our company had been bought by another company and basically stripped of its cash. And suddenly things got very, very tight, and everybody and his dog was being laid off. It's what we called a RIF, a reduction in force. And people were standing around the copying machine, copying their resumes. I mean, they were openly looking for a new job. And my job as director of training and development suddenly went from, all this good stuff I was supposed to do to outplacement, helping people find their next job, teaching them how to write a resume and that kind of stuff. I mean, that's literally what I was doing. And then the day came, and this is the August 5th date. The VP of Human Resources calls me into his office and said, sorry, you're out. And I got 2 weeks severance pay, pat on the back, and that was it. I mean, it was just that cold. And there's no money left for outplacement because the money's all gone. It's just, you're done.
So
So,
they let you place everybody,
yeah,
or work to place everybody, and then had you follow them out the door.
yeah, that's basically right. And
That's
so
cold.
Mark, that your listeners will know well, was a senior in high school, and I had to come home and say, those college dreams you had, son.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. This may not be the time. And so suddenly, as a family, we had to make some tough choices, and that was the point at which. And I would have never had the courage to do this on my own, Mike. I really would never have done this. Um, it's either go find another job similar, or just say, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to hang out a shingle and be my own boss and be a consultant. And that's what I did. We cleared off the dining room table, and my wife said, this is Dad's office, leave it alone. And of course, this is back in the day when you had only one landline in your house. And so, kids don't answer the phone because, hello, no, my daddy's not here. That's not the professional image you're trying to convey. And in fact, my business card to this day says Suite B, B for basement. Um, and because you had to hide the fact that you were working from home, it was not cool.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's a whole different world, but back then you had to sort of, shh, I work from home, and
Mm-hmm.
that was problematic. So I started trying to make a living. There you go.
Well, Mark tells me he can remember you sitting at the table sketching out the company logo
Yes.
on graph paper.
Yeah. I had a friend, a graphic designer, say that looks like kitchen table graphics, and I said, well, it literally is. It literally is.
Thank you for
Yeah.
acknowledging my work
Yeah.
and its origin story.
Yeah.
So yeah. Mark was, when he told me that, I was like, okay, so he was old enough to know. So he was a
Yeah.
senior.
He was a senior.
I
Yeah.
didn't know
Maybe,
exactly.
maybe I guess he was getting ready to go into his senior year because it was in the. No, wait a minute. Yeah. Hmm. I'm not sure. I think he was in his senior year. Right.
Yeah. So yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. You set up an office. You got a dedicated line that's your
Yeah.
house
No,
phone.
I didn't have a dedicated line at first, but
Yeah,
then I got one. Yes.
yeah. And so, how do we get customers? How do we let people know we're suddenly in the
That's
training consulting?
yeah, that's really hard. And I think that's where people struggle. In fact, I would struggle today if I hadn't had 35 years of history under my belt. Where would I go to get customers? And I would tell people, tend your network. You know, every single interaction you have with a person, of course, I don't know if business cards are so common these days, but the equivalent of get a business card, get their contact information. I still have OCD about every person that I interact with goes into my database. I built a database for myself. This is long before there were iPhones and things like that. And so I'm really, I can go back and say, oh yes, I don't remember you, but according to my notes, we met back on September 23rd, 1979, and you were doing such and such. So tend your network, be relational with people, because somebody is going to find you a job. Can I give you an example? Uh,
Sure. Yes.
so um, when I had been at Clark Equipment, one of the things I did was an employee attitude survey. Y'all are probably familiar with those, where basically, how well do you like working here? That kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, I've administered those. Yes.
Yeah, right. And they can get statistically kind of interesting and so forth, and the logistics of making sure that everybody gets a chance and that they're done anonymously and all that stuff. And yet that you can slice and dice and parse the data to say, well, Mr. Manager X, your folks really hate you, and Miss Manager Y, your folks really love you, and all that kind of stuff. So I did all that. So the guy who was running that for us, I mean, the external consultant, called me after I'd been laid off and said, "Hey, Martin, I understand you've been laid off." I went, "Yeah." He said, "I got a friend who wants to do an article about people who've been laid off and that are doing something with this." I went, "Okay." And he says he works for Fortune magazine. I went, "Okay, I'm interested." And so I get a call from this editor at Fortune magazine who's a friend of my friend, so it's a friend of a friend, right? Um, and he interviews me. He says, "I really like what you're doing. Let me come down and visit you." I went, "There's nothing to see. It's the dining room table." He said, "I don't care. I'm coming anyway." So, okay. So he comes to the house and we actually meet we get together for lunch. We go to a little local restaurant. He's from New York and he says, "I'm not even going to turn in this expense report because this is small. It's so small. The bill, is for $10 for two hamburgers and, all that kind of stuff." So anyway, he was pleased. And yes, I was in Fortune magazine. And those are the circumstances under which I was in Fortune magazine. And then he calls and says, "I'm going to send out a photographer team." He flew two people from San Francisco across the country. It was in December. They took all the Christmas decorations down that my wife had put in so they could shoot all kinds of pictures. And they ended up using one little tiny picture. And my wife said, "Boy, I could cut some fat out of that organization." But the upshot of it was I was in Fortune magazine. A guy who's become a very good friend saw that article and said, "He sounds like the kind of guy we might be looking for." And so he called me from Pella, Iowa, and out of the blue, now we've got a friend of a friend of a friend kind of thing. A friend, we're getting a pretty long thread. But he calls and said, "We'd like you to come down and talk to us." I ended up working for them for 2 years doing a whole bunch of IT projects, and they became very good friends. The name of the company is Vermeer. I don't know if you name companies or not, but they're the inventors of the round hay baler for those who are into that sort of thing,
Mhm.
as well as being trenching and boring equipment. I mean, they make lots and lots of stuff. It's a wonderful company. I really enjoyed working for them. But friend of a friend of a friend kind of thing. So tend your network, and publicity is good.
Oh yeah. Fortune magazine, not a
Yeah,
bad place to start.
yeah,
Yeah, and so many times, right? The universe, everybody has a different word for it, but it smiles on you.
yeah, right.
With the opportunity you need at the moment you need it presents itself.
Well, and Mike, I'm curious what you think about this. Um, I feel like in a way my career. I mean, I'm in the twilight years of my career now. I've got a lot of snow on top. Didn't used to have that. Um,
There are worse things that could happen.
no comment. um, but I always felt like what I was doing was just trying to make a living. And I think it came from what happened back in 1993 when, I got laid off summarily. And so it was just like, I just got to put food on the table. That's my job, is to put food on the table. And I wonder if that sometimes meant that I set my sights too low, because I didn't grow this massive business with all these people working for me. It was pretty much always me, myself, and I, and some, good friends who worked on different projects together. But that was okay. I mean, I wasn't trying to get rich or trying to build people say you're an entrepreneur, and I go, a real entrepreneur is somebody who's trying to grow, some massive something or other, and trying to hit for the fences, hit a home run. I was just trying to get a base hit, every day if I could get a base hit and put food on the table, I was good with that. And so did that limit me? Maybe. What do you think? I'm not supposed to ask you questions.
Well, no, and my path has been the same, right? As a sole proprietor, according to my tax returns.
Yes, right.
So yeah, I don't have a large company, a consulting firm, a training company, that type of thing. It's interesting. I've worked with so many talented people, and we've discussed it many times. We ought to all band together and just start something big and go after a big client, right?
Right.
Let's go bag an elephant,
Yeah.
and we never did it. And when I same, I'm starting to reflect back on my journey. I think there was something about the simplicity of it,
Right.
the complete autonomy, simplicity of it was me and my client, and I didn't have to worry about anything else.
Right. Right.
And
I mean, I sort of built a system, if you will, for engaging other consultants in a project. And this was kind of my pitch to clients. Uh, Back in the day, you may remember Arthur Anderson. That was the big consulting firm.
oh
They
yeah,
they got sideways with Uncle Sam and so forth, and ended up being dispensed and so forth. But people would say, "Oh, you're awfully small." I go, "Oh, yes, I'm not Arthur Anderson. I'm not a big consulting firm." But that's a good thing. You want that because that means I am paying attention to you. You are my client, and I'm looking at you. I'm not trying to find billable hours for some junior executive that I've just hired out of college who knows nothing. I've been around a few times. I've worked here and there. There are some clients. I'm focused on you. And so I would sort of pitch that as an advantage. And then I would say, and I've got lots of colleagues that I can call on. If this project needs somebody who has expertise in this, or we need three different people in three different places at once, I got friends. I've got a network, and I can call them, and they would be there just like that. And so, yeah, I'm bigger than just me, but I'm not Arthur Anderson, and I think that's a good thing. That was my pitch, and it seemed to work.
No, it's a fantastic pitch. Mine similar in nature. That everything I do will be customized for you.
Yeah, right,
There will be some themes, some tools, and things that I know work,
right.
but we will completely craft them so that they fit your situation, where you're at now, where you want to go.
Well, and I've always had this feeling of sort of having a fairly deep toolbox. So whatever you need, I got a tool for that. Probably I got a tool for this. I was just sort of thinking through before we were talking. What are some of my tools? And they are all over the map. But this idea of having tools that you can reach into the toolbox and say, oh, you need to be able to. Oh gosh, what are some? You need a meeting facilitated. You need to be able to build a strategic plan. You need to do some mind mapping. You need a system that can do X. It's like I got tools for that. Can I tell another story?
Oh, please do.
So I was in Maidenhead, England, with a colleague, and the year is important. It was 1999, so this is when Y2K was a big concern, and people, I worked with punch cards. People say Y2K was nothing. No, it wasn't nothing. Had we not fixed it, it would have been a major problem. But we knew what needed to be done, and we did it. So, the reason it was a nothing is because people worked really, really hard leading up to it and fixed the problem. I mean, we could go into the details of that. But I'm sitting in Maidenhead, England. This is General Motors. And General Motors is concerned about their suppliers. General Motors knows it's going to fix its problems. But what about our suppliers? Will our suppliers fix their problem? What if they don't? What will we do? And so here was the assignment. We need to have a way to go to various General Motors facilities throughout the world and think about what would we do if our suppliers dropped the ball in some way. Okay, that's kind of the assignment. So my colleague is talking to the lady who's in charge here, and I'm over in the corner going, "Yeah," she said, "We need a way to do this. We need a system." So one of the tools that I had was the way to sort of prototype a system really fast. Literally in that meeting, so over the course of, let's say, an hour and a half, I put together, it wasn't all complete, but enough of a picture of this is what a system could look like where we would store, if it's an employee problem, we'll do, if, how do we notify employees? How do we notify our suppliers? How do we, there's all kinds of things that we'll have to do, and we'll keep track. We'll have a library of all this content that we catch all over the world, so that I ended up going to Prague, and in Prague, you learn something and you go, yeah, that's a good idea. And then you end up in Brazil and you say, okay, this idea that we had in Prague, that'll apply here too. And this system was going to store all that. It did store all that. But the important thing is I had this little tool that within an hour and a half meeting, I was able to say towards the end of the meeting, would it look something like this? And we put it on the screen, and the lady kind of went, "Good, that's it." Ah, woo, ah. And we ended up getting the job. And so we ended up, traveling the world and gathering data from all these GM locations. It was great fun.
Yeah, that would be fascinating. Yeah,
That's where I got a lot of the different the different countries. I went to Madrid, I went to Stockholm, I went to Sao Paulo, Brazil, I went to Prague. I'm trying to think wherever else I went. Just all over the place. They sent us everywhere. It was great fun.
Oh, that's fantastic. The idea that the first thing I thought of when you were telling the story was we were proactive. Big corporations were thinking ahead.
Yes, true. Yeah.
That's so refreshing.
Hang on, you had me right there.
Yeah,
We
yeah,
were proactive.
We're going to get ahead of a problem.
Yeah. But I mean, just for your listeners who are young, a punch card only has 80 columns. You only get 80 digits or 80 characters. That's all you get, period. And so 1978, that 19 is redundant because that's on every stinking card. You don't need the 19 until you get close to where the 19 is going to become 20. And suddenly all those orders that are supposed to be coming in are like, no, that was supposed to come back in 1901. Nah, we don't need that. And so everything would have truly fallen apart had we not added two more digits to the date.
Yeah, I remember watching a documentary on the guy the government hired to oversee Y2K, and they were interviewing him, and he said he knew it was a lose-lose job. He said there was no way to win. He said if we didn't get this thing ready, and people woke up on January 1st and nothing worked, the electricity was out and the stoplights were gone and the water treatment plants were down.
Yep.
He said then I would be the biggest disaster. I would have overseen the biggest disaster in the history of mankind. And he said, and I also knew that if we got it and it worked perfectly, no one would know my name.
Yeah, right.
and I can't even think of his name now.
Yeah,
so
right.
So, but he knew, like, if it went perfectly, and some people would be critics, which there were some people said, well, I told you that was a big nothing burger.
Yeah, right. It wasn't a nothing. It would have been something. But I mean, for General Motors, what was interesting to me is after being in multiple countries, the theme that was emerging was, if our suppliers really mess up, and I'll use Sweden as an example. So Saab at that point was a subsidiary of General Motors. And so Saab got most of its parts via ferry. They didn't get flown in. They certainly couldn't come in by rail because there were big bodies of water around Sweden. So they came in by ferry. What if the GPS on the ferry messes up? A real possibility.
Right.
And the ferries can't run. Okay, that's a problem. It ended up that in every case, it was, how do we let people know not to come to work because there's just nothing to do. There's no parts. Right. And so, then we got thinking about communication. What if the communication systems are down? And so we had to go back to, pretty rudimentary ways of letting people know that, don't come to work, or informing them ahead of time that if such and such happens, don't come to work, just stay home. In Sweden, everybody comes to work on bicycles. So that was, like, how do we,
right. Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and yeah, you think about it, right? This is, this is before the cell phone,
Oh, yes.
this is back when to find out if school was canceled, you had to watch the
Yeah,
bottom of
right.
your television all
What if the
morning,
TV doesn't work? Yep.
like it was an NFL draft.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Like,
Because it was landlines, there was a pretty good feeling that the landlines would still work because they worked on a different technology that probably didn't, they weren't horribly digitized at that point. So, hopefully the landlines will work. But what if they don't? And, it was, anyway, I'm getting into the weeds here of that particular project, but it was fun, trying to figure all that out.
well, and the fact that you were in the room, the problems being discussed, and before the meeting can adjourn, you've roughed out a system
Yeah.
that could be a
Yeah.
repository
I
for
mean,
this
the
information.
guy who was with me, a dear friend, Wayne Townsend, he would agree with me. Oh yeah, her jaw went. That's
Oh
it.
yeah,
I want that.
yeah, yeah.
Well, you can have it for the low price of.
Yeah, I'll take one of those,
Yeah,
and
right.
we'll save the world.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
that's that's pretty cool. So obviously you've got this rare blend of training, facilitation skills, and then you've got this IT systems, a little bit of coding, programmer
Yep.
skills. All right, this makes you completely unique uh,
Oh, there you go. Well, that explains it. Okay.
in this space, right? Kind of like we were talking about earlier. You got, like I said, some people could do one or the other, but to have somebody who could do both.
Yeah, I wasn't as good as anybody at one particular thing, but I was okay at lots of things. And
Mhm.
so I guess I'm a generalist. And I have lots of interests. If somebody says, like statistical analysis, I didn't know anything about that, but I thought, oh, that could be interesting. So I could start digging into that a little bit. And,
Mhm.
anyway.
Well, I think one of the things that when you think about it, what does it take to succeed in training, consulting, coaching? Um, I've always believed you have to be just wildly curious.
Yes. Well said.
You
Yep.
have to want to know deep in your bones, how do things work?
Yeah. Here,
Whether
here.
whether it's human interactions, how do those work, or if it's systems or processes.
Yep.
I just want to know, all right, how's this work? All right, so
Well, and
what
and your
happens
folks can
next?
see I've got tons of books back behind me. The people say, "Have you read all those?" I go, "Yeah, I have." They're this is interesting stuff, and it's a wide variety of topics. Everything from the book "Cows, Tails, and Cobras." Do you know that one, Mike? Do you
Mhm.
remember that?
Yep.
Okay, some of your listeners may not know that one, but it's worth looking up. That's up here, as well as the Turing omnibus and Turing. He was the inventor of the computer.
Oh yeah.
The story of Bell Labs is back there. This, you name it. Peter Senge and systems thinking is back there. So, yeah, you have to have a wide range of curiosity and dig into it. Go find out.
Hmm. Well, and then on the people side of things, um, this experiential learning thing. So once again, this was kind of coming into favor in the early '80s.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
about the right time frame. Yeah.
but a lot of people, there was total quality management, the old TQM movement.
Yep.
All that was going on. I can see our young listeners now just googling frantically.
Yeah.
What was Y2K? What was TQM? What was Bell Labs?
Yeah, right.
Like, we're so sorry.
Yeah, right. We're two old guys. I'm
Yeah,
older than Mike.
yeah.
So,
Hopefully, this is expanding your breadth of world knowledge. So the idea of experiential learning. So where did that go? So you're doing this IT stuff, and now you're doing the most involved and participative type of training. How did that come about?
um, yeah, so that's an interesting thing to think about. When I worked for Clark, one of the projects that I did, the big project, was implementing a new MRP system. And Google it, look it up, material requirements planning. Um, but I was finding that I was ending up being the guy who was training people on how to use the system. And I found that the best way to teach them was to sort of have let's call it a simulation. We can't go live with this with real steel parts. They're expensive and there's welding and all that kind of stuff. And so what I ended up doing was crafting out of paper. Represents part number 1, 2, 3, and this represents part number 2, 3, 4, and so forth. And the staple gun, you know, cha-chunk, that's the operation where you weld them together. And so we would basically simulate what was happening on the factory floor. And so I had sort of designed a simulation as the best way to help people learn. So this was experiential learning. I'm
Okay.
I'm a deep believer that you can tell people, and they may remember it, if they get a chance to do it, that's much more, it just sort of sinks deep. And so this idea of experiencing it became very important to me. And at the time, this is my cup from Saturn Corporation.
Yep. The tin
That
cup.
was one of my early clients. They're no longer in business. There's a part of me that wonders, I worked for Saab, I worked for Saturn. They're both no longer in business. Wonder if I had something to do with
What's the
that.
common theme here?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, Mark.
I think it just means that things move on. But Saturn was big on experiential learning, and I learned a lot from them about helping people sort of gather. So, for example, you talk about needing tools that you sort of can pull out of your toolbox. So an example is I have a little activity I do with a tennis ball that just talks about process improvement. All it takes is a tennis ball and a stopwatch. It doesn't take a lot of equipment. That I've got that in my briefcase. I've always got a stopwatch and a tennis ball in my briefcase because you never know when you're going to need to have this group of people do something, and it's fun and it's kind of silly and it's engaging, and at the end of the day they go, wow, you know what, if we work together we really can make things better. I mean, we had, real metrics. You have a stopwatch. Did you improve your time? Yes, you did. So the engineers in the audience are like, that's real numbers. That's serious. That really worked. And, the touchy-feely people are going, yeah, we worked together. It was fantastic. And they all come together and go, we can agree, we can do this. And so then you use that enthusiasm to then move on to their problem and say, okay, can we take this same kind of enthusiasm and what we just did there and do it for the real situation we've got in our organization. And I just found that worked a lot. So experiential learning just really, I don't know, it pulls people away into something that's fun. And some people say, oh, it's games, and I go, I don't really like calling it games because it has a very serious purpose. But it's fun. Is there a problem with having fun while you're learning? If that's a
Mhm.
problem, then maybe you know maybe you need to find somebody else. So
Oh, yeah, yeah. I don't need to sit in a room by myself and recopy the manual by
right.
hand in order to learn it
Right.
and
Right.
lose my will to live. The the idea that and you said something very very profound. The idea that you're creating a mindset that's enthusiastic and open to
Right.
challenge,
Yep.
and you go, wow, right? Because we all see, challenge and issues and obstacles as a negative, and because we see them as a negative, we can't get past them.
Yeah. Right.
And
No,
so your
exactly right.
experiential learning was, yeah, I got them enthused, I got them excited, I got them to see possibilities, and then we tackled the hard stuff.
Yeah, I've got a little model that I use where basically you have I'm trying to think now. You have the experience, and then you sort of react to that. You get the gut, like, yeah, how'd you feel about that? What did it make you think about? Blah, 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 that kind of thing. Then you say, well, how does that translate to something that's more in your world, the real world, not the tennis ball and the stopwatch, but a real problem you're having on the factory floor. And then what are you going to do about that? And that cycle, that I call that the experiential learning cycle, that really helps you think outside the box because you're doing something silly with a tennis ball and a stopwatch, and then pretty soon you take that juice that you've got and you apply it to what's going on in the real factory. And I mean, I'll give you another example. This was for Vermeer, the company in Pella, Iowa that I worked for a long time ago. An engineer took me out on the factory floor. He says, "You see that stack of weldments over there?" And I went, "Yeah." It was literally stacked to the ceiling. And he says, "I happen to know, because I'm the engineer who works engineering changes, that those are all obsolete parts. They're still making them. We got a problem. We're making parts that are deliberately obsolete." I go, "Yep, that's a problem. That's costing the company money. We need to figure this out." So we did another simulation that I designed was, I call it the factory on a desktop. You use little Lego bricks to represent parts, and you have to buy them with Monopoly money, and
All
you
right,
have
all
to
right,
have
all
them
right.
shipped in.
I'm a little familiar with this. I watched one of your videos.
Oh dear.
Slow down and give people a real sense of this. This is fabulous.
Let me get it. Okay, here's the car.
All right, all right, all right,
This is the car. So
right.
this is
So,
made out of Lego.
Yeah, for
And
our people on the
each,
podcast, yeah. Martin's holding up about a 3-inch Lego car.
yeah,
Not remarkable. Doesn't look like one of those 5,000 piece jobs.
no, it needed to be simple, but
Right.
basically it's just a simple little car. Comes apart and all that kind of stuff. And each one of these has a part number, just like it would in manufacturing, and you have to buy them with monopoly money. And
All
so
right, all right. So
there's
so
real
set the
cost.
scene. So you've got tables, you've got people. Like set the scene for everybody because this is fascinating to me.
Yeah, you so there's one table that's the assembly line. It has four people on it. Then you have some sub-assembly areas. One is for tires, one is for welding, one's for windshield assembly. I forget what they are. The different parts that go in this little car here. And then you have over on the other side of the room, you have vendors. And so if you run out of parts and you need another tire, then you got to order it from the vendor and you got to pay for it. So there's a guy who's the CFO and he's got the monopoly money and he's going around peeling off, dollar bills and paying for it. And pretty soon, I've designed it so that pretty soon the company is going bankrupt. I mean, they're in deep, deep trouble. And so we say, time out, time out.
You underfunded your simulation
On purpose, yes.
on purpose. Okay, I'm with you. I'm with you.
And under inventoried it as well. And so, time out, time out, time out. We can do something here that we can't do in the real world. We're going to take a time out. What the heck is going on? We need to fix this. And so I have them, through a process, work on ways to improve the system. And by the time the hour is up, well, it probably takes more than an hour, probably a couple of hours. They have greatly improved the situation, so they're actually back to making money again and feeling good about what they've accomplished. And then you say, okay, if you could do that here, look at that stack of weldments; those are obsolete. How can we take that same enthusiasm and fix that problem with that stack of weldments? And that's what we did.
Wow.
So
That's
Mike, is great fun.
Oh yeah, no, the photos I saw look like a blast, right?
Oh,
Everybody's
yeah.
sitting there with their money and their cars and their
Yeah,
parts
right. And things get pretty intense about midway through. They're like, "You cotton picker, I ordered those parts 3 months ago. Why are they not here? Well, you haven't paid me yet."
yeah.
Well, we're gonna have to take out another bank loan. Oh my goodness, what interest rate are you charging? Oh my god, all
No,
that stuff.
that's fantastic, and you can do that in 2 hours or less.
Yeah, 2 hours is probably, yeah. I probably should be more generous and say with all the thinking and so forth, I'd say half a day. But um,
Still,
yeah, still, it's
that's remarkable.
yeah. I've still got the trunk. I still back in the day you could ship it by air. I would, yeah. Oh, it was, yeah, big old trunk. Yep, a lot of fun.
Man,
So now back to what we were talking about earlier to your viewers. That was one of the things that I did is I thought, if I had a tool like this where I could basically pitch this to a company and say, hey, I can help you, and here's how we do it. It's nice to have that in your hip pocket that you can pull out and say, we could do this, and
mhm.
and because it's complicated, frankly, you can charge more for it. I'm just
Oh
saying,
yeah. Well, the it's not the thing; it's the idea behind the thing.
Yeah,
It's
right.
that you had this vision for an experiential experience, and then you built it, and you can facilitate it in a way that it's translatable to their current problems, issues, opportunities.
We built another
Wow.
one. It was the American Hospital Association wanted a simulation of the healthcare industry, which I'd love to build one now because things have changed considerably, and
Oh,
I'm not sure how I do it. I mean that would be complicated, but it'd be fun. But we did it for the American Hospital Association, and so we had people with they were rolling dice like, oh dear, Mrs. Jones got sick, so she has to go to the hospital. I mean, it was that kind of stuff. And at one point, we had a bunch of administrators of the some hospital systems in Chicago. We did it in Chicago, um, and they said at one point you realize that current laws, the conversation we just had between the doctors and us, are illegal. And
oh,
you kind of go, so maybe there's something wrong with the system.
mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know that we're equipped to fix that, but at least we can kind of point to where part of the problem is. So anyway,
Man.
that was great fun.
Oh yeah. Well, and so yeah, the same idea. I can translate it into any industry
Yeah, right.
and just modify it slightly. The concept remains the same.
Yeah,
We change some of the activities, and we're off and running.
yeah. We did one for U.S. Steel in Gary, Indiana. This was back at the factory on the desktop, and they wanted me to add a role, which I did. And my grandfather was dead by then. Uh, I thought, I wonder what Grandpa would have thought about this, because they wanted me to add a role for the union steward. Okay, so I added a role, and I said, "What do you want the union steward to do?" They said, "We want him to sit and read a newspaper." I went, "Okay." So
I thought you were
I,
going to say you want him to oppose everything.
no, no.
Just
So in the simulation, we had a guy whose role was the union steward, and his instructions say sit and read a newspaper during the entire activity. And so, you know, the discussions afterwards were very interesting. Why is he sitting over there doing nothing? Well, good question. Why don't you answer that?
yeah, let's dive into that.
Yeah.
I'll be here making notes on a flip chart.
Exactly. Yes. And
Staying out,
try
staying
not to
out
get
of
in
this.
between the two of you as you fight this out.
Yeah, yeah. That's the beauty of the consultant facilitator is yeah, you can step back,
Well, and
let the
Mike,
interaction.
I'm curious what you think about this. One of the things I like about consulting is there does come a point when it's done, and you can basically walk away. It doesn't go on forever. It comes to an end.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, it's a good end. You know, some of them don't end so nicely, but most of them, it's like, okay, I did what I said I was going to do. If you do good contracting up front, and by contracting, I don't mean legal stuff. I mean understanding each other. You know, this is what I'll do, this is what you'll do. If we do good contracting up front, when I'm done, I'll say, here's the outcomes. This is what we did. We all agreed that everything's, yep, okay, good. I'll quietly go away, and you're now better able to solve your problems in the future than you were before I came. Good for all of us.
Oh yeah.
That was kind of my mantra.
Well, it kind of goes back to when we were talking about how do you get started, how do you get clients and things like that. Uh, that was often the case. Was okay. This is winding down, but we could, here's a different issue,
Oh
maybe
yeah.
in a different part of the company or a different, subsidiary or whatever, and all of a sudden, right, you're over there working on something different, but with with the same umbrella organization.
And you already know, I mean, one of the things that I found both fun and challenging is you have to learn, I'm going to call it the lingo of the local company. Um, and you have to be a quick study because they don't recognize that they are using their own language to describe. I mean, my favorite example is basically what I call a shop order. It's basically the signal that says to the factory, make one of these. And so they could be called a shop order, a work order. They could be called a 1297. Like, there's all kinds of words for it. And people just use those words and you go, what the heck are they talking about? But you don't say that out loud, and then you listen a little more and you go, oh, a 1297. That's a work order. Okay, now I got the basic concept of what you're talking about here, and you try to accommodate their lingo as quickly as you can, and the faster you can do that, the better you'll do. Because if they are still going a 1297, don't you know what that is? That's that. Okay.
Well, and I've found that you're absolutely right, and I've found that they're excited to explain it to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I always thought, I'm going to look like an idiot and they're going to be annoyed.
Right.
But most people are like, oh no, yeah, that's they're
Yeah.
right.
Right.
And they're kind of excited to explain their language and
Yeah.
terms.
So I would say, so a 1297 is that what I would think of as a work order? They go, yeah, 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 except that for us, da, 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 and off they go and they're telling you all about it. And you're like, that's what I needed. Thank you very much. You're good.
The funniest thing I found was many times when I asked, oh, what do those initials stand for? We've got our CPG. Oh, cool. What does CPG stand for?
Yeah.
And they
I
all
don't know.
look at each other like they've used the initials so long they can't remember what it stands for. Well, it was certified. We don't know. That's
Yeah,
just
right.
the thing that
Here's
does
what it
the
does.
thing. Yeah. It
Well,
always cracked me up.
another story. This was Arvin Industries, which is a supplier to the automotive industry, make shock absorbers and that sort of thing, down in south of Nashville. I went into their factory. They wanted me to try to help improve their engineering process. And so basically, what I did was I went around. Here's another tool I had, sort of a process mapping, a method of documenting what processes happen, right? And so I would go around and I'd say, so how does this, who sends you what, and what do you send to who, and what do you do with it, and so forth. And then I'd go to the next person and say, well, he sends you this, right? And I went, yeah. So what do you do with it? Well, I do this, and then I send it on to this, and and so you get this overview picture. And I realized it really came clear to me at that particular company. I knew more about the overall process than anybody who worked there. And I thought, well, this is probably not good in a way, but in a way, it's pretty cool because, I can maybe actually help them and say, there's sort of a dead end here. Sally produces this and puts it in this mailbox and nobody picks it up. It just sits there. So we could have Sally not do that anymore and save Sally some time. Oh, that'd be great.
Mhm.
So, you know,
Well, the idea, I think the Japanese call it what Genji Gambutsu, go to the source. And I've also heard it said like I think another word for it is Gimby, just go see. Right, the idea, and that's what you do, right?
yeah,
You just go to the source and you go see.
yeah,
I'm
eh,
watching it,
yeah,
right, making
right.
some notes. But
And
Toyota had to come up with, that's one of their four Toyota principles. They had to make it one of their cornerstone principles because
people
without
don't do that.
nobody does it. Right? There's a problem.
So
Well, go see.
how does that relate to the what I used to think of from Toyota was the five whys?
Mhm. That's part
It's
of that. Yeah, yeah. The critical thinking, Kaizen, and
yeah,
then, but before you get into the process improvement,
yeah. You have to
Genji
figure out what's going
Gambutsu
on.
states you need to go see it.
Yeah,
Don't take
here, here,
secondhand
here,
information
here.
from a guy who hasn't seen, right? So you're just going to see it, and in turn, now you're the most knowledgeable person in the organization on their own systems and
Yeah.
processes.
I got asked to do a project. This was much later. You were talking about you do a project for a company and then later you do another project for the same company in a different area. So this was one for General Motors again. The internet had come along and salespeople in dealerships were supposed to be responding to these internet leads. Right, that was a big challenge. You know more about this than I do. And so one of the questions was, this was sort of fairly on in the internet sales whole push. We think that if you respond to an internet lead faster, it translates into more sales. True or not true? That was kind of the question. So they gave us literally millions of records of internet leads and, whether they turned into sales and all this kind of stuff. And so I was supposed to sort of crunch, do this big analysis sort of thing. And so as a part of this, I sort of lined it up in a histogram. Y'all know what a histogram is, kids? um, so basically, how quickly did the dealership respond? So there's the big response, and then it sort of tails off, right?
Mhm.
They sort of that's what you would expect. But Mike, there was this spike right here. So it's whoop. I'm like, what's that? What's that doing there? So I start digging into it. It turns out nobody knew this. I was the one who told them. Nobody knew this that after 31 days, the end of the month, if the dealership has not closed the lead, the system automatically assumes it needs to be closed. And so they closed it. And that big spike was nobody was calling anybody. Nobody was following up with the customer. The computer was just arbitrarily saying, we're going to close that one. And so, nobody had really looked at it that way before. And I went, so what's the, I went, oh crap, that's not good. We need to be taking care of those customers instead of just having them booted out. And so that was fascinating. If you don't go see, if you don't look at the data, you'll never find out.
That is wild. Yeah, the data will tell you a story.
Yeah,
And
absolutely it will. Yep.
and I think that's one of your secret sauces is you're very comfortable with the data and you're very comfortable with the explanation of what the story of the data is
I,
telling.
I like doing that. A very recent project I've done for a big CPA firm was for a bunch of colleges. They do CPA auditing for colleges, and so we started gathering a bunch of data, and I can't think of an example, a specific example right now, but I would sort of say, I wonder what the ratio is between that and this, and they would have never thought of putting those two together because they sort of didn't. I'm stupid enough to go, I wonder if there's a relationship there, and every once in a while they go, oh, that's really, I didn't know that. Maybe we should dig farther into that. Well, great. If you don't play with the data and start sort of mushing it around and go, what about this? What about that? You don't
Mhm.
find out. Go
Well,
see. That's a good theme. I like
yeah,
that.
yeah, just go see. The internet war story, same thing, working for General Motors. And, they were encouraging the stores when they got, inquiries from the internet to respond to them and respond quickly, thanks
Yes.
to your advice. And so they had a store out in rural Kentucky. It had 160 some odd hour response time
Yeah.
consistently, week in, week out. It was just 160 hours
Yeah.
was their response time.
Too long and something's going on.
So I
Your
drive,
antenna are up.
yeah, I drive out there and I'm talking to the guys. Good little store, lots of friendly folks.
Hmm.
And I said, so you got your website up, you're getting interlaid. I said, so what does your response process look like? He goes, oh, it's fantastic. I said, well, can you show me? He said, yeah. He says every Friday we turn on this computer. And we turn on this computer on Friday, and then we respond to all the leads. Like, okay, like it's all becoming clear. Like how this 160,
Yep. Uh-huh.
like everything's coming into focus. And then he goes, and we made a template to send to the customers. And this was an advanced move. Templates were kind of new. I was like, oh, this is an advanced move. I said, can I see the template?
Mm-hmm.
He said, absolutely. He brings it up and it says, thanks for your inquiry. If you still want a vehicle, call this number. That's it.
Yeah. Right. So yeah.
And then they send all the responses, turn the computer off
Yep.
for a week.
Yep. Yeah. And you kind of go, so you don't really get the whole idea of the internet, and it's a different world. I mean, to contrast that, I was doing a dealership in Puente Hills, California, and I met a young woman who, on her own, I mean, she didn't have any guidance from her boss. It's just basically she decided, this is how I'm gonna sell cars, and so she would deliver it to she would do the deal at the kitchen table and deliver it to them. The whole thing was done through the internet. They never came to the dealership. And the management was kind of like, it's you got to come to the dealership. You just got to, so we can stuff you into the system and force you to jump through all the hoops and all that kind of stuff. And she was like, no, if somebody wants to buy a car and I have what they need, and we'll go do the deal at the kitchen table. She was fabulously successful and way ahead of her time. I mean, we were like, that girl there, clone her, get more of her. That's the way it needs to be done. It's the personal touch with the high tech side of it.
Oh,
You're too young to remember a book called Megatrends. It was kind of important in the mid '80s.
okay.
And one of his observations was that we're getting into a world where it's high tech, high touch.
Yes.
The two go hand in glove. And yeah, I guess maybe that's kind of been my feeling is, okay, let's use lots of technology. Technology is great. It's just a tool. Let's make sure that we really care and value people, and that we take care of them.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. A question I ask sales consultants and service advisors and dealerships is in in what way is it better interacting with you than going online?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, I'm slower. I know less stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
no, no,
Yeah,
no, no. It goes back to the high touch thing, right? In what way is working with you better than going online? And they have to think about, right? What am
yeah.
I delivering that
So an
make you want to
analogy
interact with
is
me?
in the higher education space. I had a group of presidents and deans that I was talking to, and my question to them was, why would some student come to your school and pay a lot of tuition? I mean, this problem has only gotten worse in the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
Pay a lot of tuition when they could go to, at the time, University of Phoenix, or one of these other online degrees, and not have to pay all that money. If you want to have a little intramural sports experience, get some kids to play tag football on the weekend. Get four buddies and rent a dorm, not I mean a motel room. If you want to live in a dorm, that kind of stuff. And if you want to get an education, do it. Do it online. And so then I would say to the presidents, why? How are you going to answer that student who says, "Why should I come to your school instead of doing that?" And they kind of gave you the same look that you gave, like, because it's really great here.
Yeah.
Well, that'll do. That solves the problem. No.
I often
Until
get,
you can answer that question, you're going to have a problem, and they are having problems.
yeah, I often get the answer, well, we're really nice people.
Yeah, right. Well, the frequent answer for colleges is, well, we have a low student faculty ratio.
Oh, okay.
Everybody
That's the
says that.
go-to.
That's
Okay.
that's not good enough.
No.
It's got to be more compelling than that.
Oh, that's fantastic. So all these these cool things. You've talked about a few of them. What's a tool or a conversation that over the years when when it came up, all right, it was the right time that you just was your favorite. You were like, I got just what we need right here.
Oh,
What's
wow.
what's the one you go? Oh yeah, I
Well, I like the one in Maidenhead, England. That was kind of fun when I made the lady's jaw drop. I enjoyed that one.
yep.
Um, oh, goodness, I don't know. There have been lots of fun things through the years that, uh, I mean, I don't know that this is necessarily the best one, but just an example is I put together a process for doing a technology assessment. So basically, we would go into an organization, and we had a pretty robust process for we're going to go see. I mean, we took lots of pictures. We used to do this for automotive dealerships too. You know, you'd go in the bathroom and take pictures, and same idea of this process that you look under all at all these things, and then this was the good thing is at the end you would get the management team for a college that would be the president and his direct reports. At a dealership, it would be the manager, you know, the general manager and his direct reports. But you'd get the right people together, and you would let me back up. The night before in the hotel room, night before in the hotel room, you and me and the team, you know, there would typically be three or four of us. We would sit around and we would go through our checklist and we would say, what are the major themes that we want to convey to these people tomorrow morning? And we would come up with we would say to them, this is our first impressions. This is what we think that you probably ought to be thinking about. But if it was our organization, here's what we would focus on. And so we would then prepare a presentation and give it to them the next morning. And time after time after time, we would get, oh, wow, that's really, really helpful. And then we'd go a step further and we would say, all right, you can't do all these things all at once. You know, you have
Mhm.
limited resources. We all do. And so we had this little process. We would, you know, you've seen those little sticky dots. They're often used at yard sales, you know,
Mhm.
blue stickers, green stickers, whatever. We would give everybody like three stickers and we'd say, okay, would write it all on literally on a flip chart because it was important that they see it being written as we were discussing it with them. So take your three dots and put them on the three that you think are the most important. Basically, you're voting, but you're not voting because it's not winners and losers. It's just like this is where I think our attention ought to be paid. And so they would go up to the board and they would do this, and then you'd step back and let everybody sort of digest and go, oh boy, that one there got a lot of interest, didn't it? We probably ought to do that first. You know, and so it was them deciding this is where what we're gonna do. And to me, that was, I mean, I won't say that was the most spectacular thing, but it worked again and again and again, and you just got good results and people
Mhm.
saying thank you, you really helped us. And boy, that's music to a consultant's ears if people say, you know, you helped us. That's what you want to hear,
Oh yeah, yeah.
rather
Well,
than thank you very much for that three-ring binder, and they'll
yeah,
never open it again.
yeah. Never to be looked at again or spoken of.
Yeah.
The idea of the people like choice,
Yes.
right? People highly value their own opinion,
Yes. Yes.
and so you allowing right choice and their preferences to come forward, and I've always tried to keep in the back of my mind that they everybody there really knows more about this place than I do.
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
for me to say this is your number one priority is
Yeah.
just egotistical and probably inaccurate.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I know what I've seen and I know what here, but I don't know all the constraints that from budgets to
Yeah.
this leader's idea of he hates this idea of these and
Or this, you know, Fred over in engineering is just he's just not very good at that. So let's just don't count on that happening. You know,
right.
that kind of thing. It's just acknowledging the facts and yeah.
And so
Oh my.
allowing them to take that knowledge and apply it to, okay, let's prioritize these in the order,
My feeling was that as a consultant, I had a unique advantage in that I was from away and looking at it with fresh eyes. And that's a good thing. My second unique advantage was I often could look at the big picture where they were looking at the weeds,
Mhm.
down in their own specific little department or whatever. You know, we talk about the silo mentality. it's a real thing.
Mhm.
And it should be fought against, but it happens, out of necessity in some cases. So I had those two advantages, but then I didn't know more than they did. And I had a boss once who said to me, people support what they help create. So if you can figure out a way to let them create their own thing, their own choices of their priorities of what they're going to work on, they'll be much more bought into that than if you say, this is your priority one, this is your priority two. That doesn't work as well. Let them create it. Just guide them, help them, figure out how to do it.
Yeah, the nowadays the terminology is the IKEA effect.
Ah,
So yeah, people completely value much more highly value things that they build.
yeah,
And IKEA has done some surveys on it. If you ask somebody who's put the furniture together, how would you rate this in quality and style? Way up
yeah,
here. You ask some random stranger to just look at it and they go, oh, it's about a 3.
yeah, right. That's a good point. Yeah, I had not heard it called the IKEA effect, but I mean, having worked in Sweden a lot, I'm very keen on IKEA. So
Oh yeah, yeah. There's method to the madness. Yeah, if you put it together, you think more highly of it.
yeah,
And
right.
so
Here,
taking
here.
that into the consulting, training, facilitation world, yeah, yeah, absolutely perfect. Um, is there any person or project? You talked about the Y2K and how meaningful that was. Any others where you look back and you go, did some really good work there?
Oh, I really liked the LAMP consortium that I put together. That went on for 17 years, and it was a
Wow.
group of colleges who banded together to use the same software for delivering distance education. And we were heavily, well versed in doing that when COVID hit. And so my schools that I was working with didn't blink an eye. Whereas a lot of colleges, like, what do we do? How I don't know how to teach online. They fumbled and staggered and had a really rough time of it. Whereas my school said, all right, everybody go home, just keep on doing what we've been doing. And the teachers, the professors knew how to do it. And yeah, we had a spike in utilization. We had to throw some more servers into the mix. But basically, I was proud of them because we just kept right on clicking without making a hiccup. And so that was a good thing. I thought that was good. And the Mellon Foundation recognized what we did was good work. They said, you've shown that even organizations with limited resources, if they band together, can leverage very sophisticated software very successfully and for very little money. I mean, I basically charged them a membership fee, and that's basically what paid my consulting fee and paid for the servers and so forth. And it was a good thing. I was proud of it.
Oh, that's amazing. And yeah, my daughter started college the first year of the pandemic at,
Oh,
at a
rough
major,
time.
yeah, yeah, terrible time to be a freshman. Uh, and I saw firsthand, she was home part of the time taking her online classes and stuff like that. And this very highly touted university was terrible.
Yeah.
Like it was just literally painful to see these professors and graduate assistants and folks had no idea what they were doing.
Well, and you think about Joel Barker's The Business of Paradigms. When the paradigm shifts, everybody goes back to zero. So the professors who were really good at in classroom teaching,
Mhm.
the paradigm shifted. Everybody went distance, and they went back to zero, and they knew nothing more than the guy next to him who had no experience at all. And it showed. And the people who had thought about it ahead of time did much better. Um, and that was where my schools, they were already thinking about it, doing it. It was part of their opera. We had one school. I liked the way they said it. They said every class that you take, you can do live or later. That was their term.
That's
And
a
and what that
great
meant is
catchphrase.
you can be on campus and take it in classroom. You can take it in your dorm room or from your apartment or across town, or you can watch it recorded later and then turn in your homework through the system, live or later. And then when COVID hit, everybody went, well, just keep on doing live or later. Probably not many of you are going to come to the class, but we're not going to change anything. We're going to still do it the way we've always done it. and that worked.
Oh, that is, yeah, the catchphrase, right? Because you got to sell everything.
Yes, that's true. You do.
Yeah, you got to have a catchy name for it. Went by a
Yeah.
tattoo place the other day and it said tattoos done while you wait.
Yeah. Duh. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
Is there any other way?
yeah, yeah. That's what I was thinking. Like, did I miss something in the?
Tattoos outsourced to India.
Yeah, did I have it put
No,
on
that's not
somebody
going to
else?
work.
They're going to bring it to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
The well, and you've got this history of doing these things, so and maybe you don't have an answer to this question.
Probably
How,
not.
but how do you spot these emerging trends and not just spot them, but to take action, right? To do something with them.
Yeah,
I'm just
that's
stunned.
a. I mean, it's a really good question. It's one that I think about a lot. As I said earlier, I'm not an entrepreneur, and so I don't necessarily. I'm not looking like, oh, let's cash in on the latest, greatest big thing. Um, at the risk of going into theological for just a second here, I knew about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin long before most people did because of what I do, and so there was a point at which I thought, I wonder what would happen if I invested in Bitcoin, and I had a few extra $1,000 that I thought, I could, I could afford to lose that if it turns out to be nothing.
Mhm.
I did the analysis just a couple of weeks ago. Had I invested, I'd be worth that investment would be worth $16 million today. Now,
Hang on, as Mark's editing this, I just heard him cry a little,
yeah, right.
a little.
Well, but I'm going to say this, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody. But I really I felt I needed to make it a matter of prayer, and so I asked God. I said, should I invest in Bitcoin? He came back and said no, and I'm like, okay, if he says no, that's good enough for me. So I didn't, and I'm going to now say, in hindsight, $16 million. I'm really glad that I didn't do that, because what would I do with $16 million? It would make me a different person. I would probably be a person I don't like, if I had $16 million that I was worried about how I was going to, take care of it, spend it, hoard it, whatever. I think it was actually, I'm glad that I made a living but didn't get rich. And I don't know, maybe that's a something to learn, is you don't, it's not all about, getting wealthy. It's about doing good work. This is what I used to say. You want to do good work with good people on worthwhile projects and get paid for it, you know?
Mhm.
And that's really what I want to do. So,
Wow. No, no, I love that. And so, um, yeah, there were trends that you saw that
yeah, that was a
aligned with.
counterexample, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. So no, it's great, right? Because everybody's wondering, right? Because everybody sees stuff and they do or don't act upon it, but they don't
Hmm.
often know why.
Hmm.
So
Well, I mean, one of the things, I mean, here I am, I'm now retired, supposedly. I'm for sale. If somebody wants me, I still will work, but I'm not actively looking for stuff. But it seems to me that there's a need for, because of my experience with this distance education, there's a need for a simple way of delivering distance education. A quick video, a handout, a little quiz, that kind of stuff. I'm thinking I would use it, and so I'm thinking that other people would use it too. And so I'm kind of mulling that over in my mind. Should I build something like that? It takes some work, but it might be worth doing. And so I think that's a trend that I've kind of identified as, I know something about that. I might ought to do that, but I don't know that I have the energy. And so I'm sort of noodling around with that right now, just as an example of something that. Or here's another one, Mike. I've never done this, but I would love to have a consulting institute, let's call it. There are people like you and me who want to learn how to do this sort of thing that we have done through the years, but they don't know how. I would love to have a 3-day workshop. We'll all come to the same place and we'll talk about it. We'll here's some things to do and we'll practice it. I mean, I have in mind that experiential learning, I would send them out by two to local restaurants and say, pretend that this local restaurant is your client, and you go there and you have dinner, and I want you to come back and say, all right, if this were my restaurant, here are some things I would do to improve things. And how would you go about doing it? So that you get some experience in what I call having your consulting antenna up. You have to sort of, you can tell something's off here. There's something wrong. Yeah, I would love to have a 3 day consulting institute that we offered every year, and people came in and we had a great time together. That'd be fun, you know.
Oh yeah. Well, funny enough, I actually did that on at the volunteer level. Uh,
Ah, there you go.
we had a 3 day class. You came in Friday night, classroom, and experiential stuff Friday night. You had a little bit of homework all day Saturday. Saturday night was homework,
Yep,
like you're talking about, and then Sunday was presentations and takeaways and that type of
yep.
thing.
Here, here.
And it was long hours. It was a boot camp.
Yeah,
I had multiple people meet their future spouse
really. Oh, that's great.
where
A
they got
marriage
married,
market.
and then I had multiple people. Some of them are just now retiring. It was that long ago that they're just now retiring from training,
Uh-huh.
facilitation jobs that they took after the boot camp.
There you go. Well,
Yeah.
I did one of those in Sweden for the Saab field force. I rented it was a ski lodge that was not during ski season. So I got it real cheap. And so we all stayed in cabins and we met during the day in the lodge for classwork. And then in the afternoon, it was between two Saab dealerships that were roughly equidistant apart. So they drove roughly 20 miles, 30 miles to go to a Saab dealership. And they basically, acted like consultants there. And then they would come back and we'd say, so what'd you learn yesterday? And all this kind of stuff. So we were basically trying to really upgrade the field force into being much more consultative with the dealerships they called on instead of, as we say in the U.S., stuffing cars down their throats,
Mm-hmm.
which is what a lot of the field force does. It's like, I've got this inventory of cars that nobody wants, and you're going to take 20 of them, and if you don't, you won't get any of that car you do want. Sorry, it's just that how that is. It's kind
Oh,
of it's it's a bad scene. So we were trying to help them be more consultative about that.
no, yeah, that's amazing, and I love how you the hands-on piece of that. Right,
Yeah,
let's go do it. Let's go try it. Let's see what you figure out.
yeah, right.
That,
And
that,
and I mean it's part of the experiential learning cycle. If you don't stop and think about what you just did, it'll probably just sort of roll off and you won't get it. It's
mhm.
gotta sink down deep. And so that means you got to talk about it. You got to discuss. You got to reflect. You got to think about it.
That's amazing. So here's a question: of all your children,
Yes.
which one's your favorite, and why is it Mark?
That's a pretty mean question. I'll,
You
I'll
know,
give the answer my wife gives. Depends on which day of the week it is.
oh, that's good. That would be the fabulous redhead.
The fabulous redhead. Yep. That's yeah. We have four sons, and they're all quite different. And a lot of fun to be with, and 13 grandchildren, I would say, by the way. And those 13 grandchildren are a hoot. I mean, they're
Oh,
growing like weeds, and they're just fantastic. We love them. So
oh, yeah, I've seen pictures of them all at the same house.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
every Sunday after church, they all come here, and my wife cooks for 21 people. And so every Sunday, it's an absolute madhouse. And about Thursday every week, we're like, what are we going to fix for dinner? And we have to go shopping and buy lots of whatever it is. So
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a potential riot situation right
yeah,
there.
right.
Yeah, yeah, that's right on the edge of just chaos. The just a couple thoughts as we wrap this up. Do you have a favorite quote, mantra, verse
Oh,
that has been a guiding light for you?
I don't have. I mean, lots of verses come to mind from the Bible, but I don't have a lot of stuff. You can't see it, but I don't have a lot of stuff. I got one saying that's here on my desk, and it's from Helen Keller, and it says, "Let me see if I'll quote it directly. I long to accomplish a great and noble task, but my chief duty is to accomplish small tasks as if they were great and noble." So that's kind of
Wow.
that's something that I try to live by. So, yeah. Anyway,
No,
there you go.
that's fantastic. And like you said, you should be, your goal was to make a living and to
Yeah.
not get rich, not pursue
Yeah.
the
And did that
things.
limit me? Yes, it probably did, but I'm not ashamed of that.
Mhm. But at the same time, you stayed true to who you are and
Yeah.
who you wanted to be.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, integrity is really important to me. Having integrity, and yeah, I haven't starved. I'm doing fine. It's, we we're comfortable. That's good enough.
Mhm. No, no, I think that's excellent.
I can say with the Apostle Paul, I've learned to be comfortable with very little and with very much, and doesn't matter either way.
Yeah, what's the verse? I've run the race and kept
Yeah,
the faith.
I've kept the faith. Yep, laid up for me a treasure in heaven. Yep.
That's fantastic. Um, any final words? Anything that maybe you haven't said that you wanted to say that I didn't
Oh
answer?
goodness, you got me talking. Of course, because you know Mark, I'm probably not somebody who's ashamed to talk, so you no surprise there. But I appreciate the opportunity to tell lots of war stories. I mean, this has kind of been a nice recap of a career that I've enjoyed and had a lot of fun, and made a lot of friends and so forth. I mean, all those flags there. Every time I worked in a country, I put a flag in the pot. And that in itself is a story. You can't get a flag in Spain. I know this because I've tried. I had to get it from in Salt Lake City after the Olympics were there. They had a whole bunch of leftover Spanish flags. For some reason, no Spaniards like their flag. Um, and I like that book that I've written several books, and I that was fun. I like doing that. So I'm still got things I want to do. I want to, yeah. Anyway, I'll
Oh,
stop.
oh no, I think we're whether you call it retirement or an intermission, I don't get the sense that you're slowing down at all.
No, I mean, to me, here's the definition of retirement. Retirement means only that you don't have to worry quite so much about where your income comes from. It doesn't mean that you do nothing. The
Right.
idea of, going and playing golf every day, just that doesn't sit well with me. I mean, hats off to people that want to play golf, but after a while you get kind of tired of that. I think you'd want to do something else. So I've still got lots of things I want to do, but I'm probably not going to get paid for them. That's okay. I can live with that. If
Yeah.
I do, fine. I'm not objecting, but that's not the main goal.
No, that's fantastic. Yeah, I get the sense that the next trend, the next thing that comes along that aligns with you, you will absolutely make the most of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, Mark has told me about your AI explorations, and I'm thinking, yeah, if I were a younger man, I'd probably be digging into that more. I'd be interested in knowing what it can and what it can't do. I
Hmm.
mean, there are some things that it's not going to be able to do. Just so, yeah. Anyway,
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
I think that's for the younger set to figure that one out, just like I figured some things out. So,
Yeah, yeah. No, it's wildly fascinating and at the same time disheartening when you see a machine do something that in previous years took you, weeks, months.
right, right.
It does it
And
within
so,
seconds.
what is the human, oh, we could get into a philosophical thing here. What is the human creative spark that makes us uniquely human that the AI can't take from us? And there are some drudge things it could. That's okay. We used animals to plow fields instead of hoeing it ourselves.
Hmm.
That's okay. They did it better than we did. So can AI do some things better than we can? Sure. But can it do everything? Nope, I don't think so.
Nope.
And we haven't quite figured that out yet. So that's going to be an interesting conversation.
Oh yeah, yeah. This is a fantastic time to be alive to
Yeah,
see what
exactly.
see what
Yeah,
happens next.
yeah, right. That's probably true of any century that you might pick. It's a fascinating,
Oh
or
yeah.
as an old friend of mine used to say, may you live in interesting times. And it was a curse.
Oh yeah. 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 For somebody who's wildly curious, it's the perfect time.
It's the perfect time. That's right. Yep. Very, very well said.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Martin, thank you so much for giving so of your time, your talent, and sharing the stories.
It's been great fun, Mike. It's been
This
great
is
fun.
this has been fantastic. I've truly enjoyed it, and yeah, just wish you all the best. And yeah, I can't wait to see what you do next.
Well, thank you. I'll let you know when the next big thing comes along.
Okay, we'll keep you all
You do
posted.
the same for me, okay?
Like I will definitely. Yeah. All right. At this point, we turn it over to our announcer, and then Mark plays a ukulele solo. So we've got that going for us.
Not sure that that's a great thing, but okay.
And that's a wrap. The musings of Mark and Mike. No rights reserved, etc. Feel free to share and discuss what you heard today. Even claim the ideas as your own. Who'd want to do that? See you next time on It Doesn't Take a Genius. Thanks.
That's good enough.